It began with the wind. Not the gentle whisper through trees you might hear on a quiet night, but a low, dragging sigh that seemed to seep out of the ground itself. In the small, decaying cemetery on the outskirts of Harrow's Hollow, no one came after dark, not even the caretaker. The graves there were old, the stone markers half swallowed by weeds, their names worn to faint scratches. But those who lived nearby swore they could hear it. Voices. Elena Whitford didn't believe in such things. She was a researcher, a skeptic, someone who dissected ghost stories to find the rotten truth underneath. She came to Harrow's Hollow, chasing a local legend, that on the anniversary of a burial, the dead whispered to the living. She had heard it was superstition, the sort of tale that kept children from wandering into the graveyard at night. But she arrived on the wrong night. The moon was a pale sliver, and the mist clung to her ankles like the hands of something unseen. She set up her recorder between two leaning stones and waited. Hours passed. The only sounds were the creak of distant branches and the slow, uneven rhythm of her own breathing. She began to wonder if the town's stories were nothing more than the wind playing tricks on lonely ears. Then a voice. It didn't come from behind her or from the darkness around her. It came from beneath, a slow, rasping whisper, so faint she had to hold her breath to hear it. "Help me." She froze. Every instinct told her to run, but curiosity was a sharper hook. "Who are you?" she whispered back. There was no pause, only more voices, overlapping, tangled. They spoke in fragments. Names, please. Accusations. And something else, dates. All of them matched deaths in Harrow's Hollow over the last century. The air grew colder, the ground beneath her shoes trembling like a slow heartbeat. Then, one voice rose above the rest. It was not faint. It was not weak. It was angry. "Elena Whitford, stop digging." Her blood went cold. She had never told anyone in the town her name. She snatched the recorder and bolted for the gate. But when she reached it, the cemetery had changed. The iron bars were bent and twisted, as though some great hand had warped them from the inside. Behind her, the whispers had grown louder, furious, overlapping, deafening, and then she realized they weren't just coming from the ground anymore. They were inside her head. The last entry on her recorder is only 13 seconds long, the sound of her own ragged breathing, a single scream, and then silence broken only by the same sighing wind slipping back into the soil. The locals still tell the story, but they never mention Elena's name. They say the voices are getting louder each year, and if you listen long enough, on the right night, you'll hear a new one. Weeks passed before anyone noticed Elena was gone. Her car was found half buried in leaves near the old cemetery gate, the driver's side door still open, her bag in the front seat. The only thing missing was the recorder. Deputy Markham led the search. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in strange things happening in Harrow's Hollow. Too many missing persons reports, too many sudden deaths, all tied somehow to the cemetery. The locals warned him not to go inside after sunset. He went anyway. The air felt heavier the moment he stepped past the gate, like walking into water. He kept his flashlight steady, sweeping over the stones, looking for any sign of Elena. Halfway in, the beam caught something, an object leaning against a crooked grave marker. It was the recorder. He pressed play. At first, it was nothing but static. Then, faintly, he heard a woman's voice, Selenis, begging, whispering, weeping. The static deepened into a low, guttural hum, and Markham realized it wasn't interference. It was breathing, slow, steady, not human. Then it spoke. Markham. He dropped the recorder. The voice didn't stop. It was behind him now, sliding into his ears like ice water. Too late. The ground beneath him shifted. Something pressed against the soil from underneath, the earth cracking like brittle bone. Pale shapes emerged, fingers, hundreds of them, reaching, clawing, dragging themselves upward. Faces followed, sunken and eyeless. mouths gaping wide as a chorus of voices poured out, each one screaming a different name. One of them was his. Markham ran, but the graves seemed endless. Every path twisted back on itself, the iron gate always just out of reach. The whispers turned to shrieks, then to laughter low, broken, and without breath. When the sun rose, the cemetery was silent again. The gate stood open. Markham's flashlight lay in the grass, its lens cracked. The recorder was gone, and in the weeks that followed, people began to hear a new voice among the others, deep, desperate, calling from beneath the ground. By autumn, the cemetery no longer kept its curse contained. It began subtly. People in the nearby town claimed they were hearing things at night. Not footsteps, not whispers in the alley. These voices came from underneath their floors, their gardens, their basements. At first, they spoke nonsense, fragments of prayers, old songs, unfinished sentences. Then they began calling names, always. The name of the person who lived in the house above Mrs. Alden was the first to vanish. Her husband told the sheriff he woke to find her kneeling in the backyard at 3 a.m. Her hands buried in the dirt up to her elbows. She was smiling. She told him, "I hear them now." Before the earth shifted under her and pulled her down like water swallowing a stone, her body was never recovered. Within weeks, the phenomenon spread. It wasn't just the townsfolk, it was travelers passing through, truckers stopping for the night, hikers cutting across the valley. Anyone who lingered too long near Harrow's Hollow began to hear them, and those who listened for too long never stopped. By November, the sheriff's department was reduced to 4 officers. The rest were gone missing or dead. Those who remained patrolled the cemetery at night, not to keep people out, but to keep something in. It didn't work. On the coldest night of the year, the ground in Harrow's Hollow cracked open, not like a sinkhole, like a mouth. The wind carried the sound for miles, 1,000 overlapping voices, screaming and laughing, each one hungry. By morning, the graves were empty. The dead had not risen. The voices had. They moved unseen, slipping into homes, into ears, into dreams. People began talking to them first in whispers, then in full conversations. Neighbors muttered to the soil in their yards. Shopkeepers murmured to the floorboards. And always, their eyes were a little too wide. No one leaves Harrow's Hollow anymore. Not because they can't, but because they won't. The voices promise them things: love, power, reunion with the dead, and they believe every word. The town's population is shrinking, though. One by one, the faithful followers disappear into the earth, their muffled cries joining the chorus below. And somewhere, deep in the ground, 3 voices are always at the front of the choir: Elena Whitford, Deputy Markham, and you. Because the longer you've listened to this story, the closer they are to finding you.